Imagine walking into the gym, hitting the weights, and watching your body actually grow. Not just in your dreams, not just feeling sore the next day, but instead seeing real muscle, real size, real shape. The kind that makes your shirts fit tighter in the chest and looser in the waist. The kind that makes you feel powerful, not just in the gym, but in your everyday life. Building muscle isn't about chasing some aesthetic ideal. It's about turning your body into a living representation of strength, consistency, and transformation. And you don't need a complicated blueprint to make it happen. You just need to focus on 5 things. 5 real proven principles that separate guys who spin their wheels for years from the ones that walk in and achieve what most other men keep dreaming of in a seemingly very short amount of time. And it starts with something that's stirred up a lot of controversy lately: bulking. More specifically, whether or not you should even do it. If you've been paying attention to fitness content over the last few years, you've probably heard this argument: you don't need to bulk anymore. Just recomp, build muscle, and lose fat at the same time. And on paper, that sounds like the perfect dream. Why gain fat only to cut it off later, right? Why not stay lean while building muscle? Well, here's the truth. Body recomposition is real, but it's also slow, limited, and highly dependent on your starting point. If you're new to lifting, coming back from a long break, or significantly overweight, yes, you can build muscle and lose fat simultaneously. Your body is so untrained that it responds well to almost any stimulus. Also, if you're carrying a lot of body fat, you have a lot of stored energy to spare that can be used to prevent muscle breakdown and assist with growth. But for intermediate and advanced lifters, trying to chase both goals at once almost always leads to subpar results. You end up spinning your wheels, barely gaining size, barely getting leaner, and wondering why you still look the same a year later. That's why a strategic bulking phase is still one of the fastest, most reliable ways to add real muscle. When you're in a calorie surplus, your body shifts into an anabolic environment. You recover faster, your gym performance improves, your strength increases, and most importantly, you build more lean tissue because your body isn't fighting to conserve energy. In fact, a study from the Journal of Applied Physiology found that participants in a calorie surplus gained significantly more lean mass compared to those eating at maintenance, even when protein intake and training were the same. And these weren't beginners, they were trained individuals. That's a key point. Once you've built a foundation of muscle, you need to give your body more resources if you want it to keep progressing. Now, yes, some fat gain is inevitable during a bulk, but this is where discipline and strategy come in. You're not trying to get fat and call it muscle. You're aiming for a lean bulk, meaning your average weight gain should land at around 1/4 to 1/2 pound gain per week over time, not necessarily every single week. So when you first start bulking, it's completely normal to gain a few pounds quickly due to increased carbohydrate intake and water retention, not fat. Each gram of stored glycogen holds about 3 grams of water, so early weight spikes don't mean you're gaining fat too fast. They're just part of the process. To hit that targeted rate of muscle growth, most people need to eat about 250 to 500 calories above their maintenance levels per day. A good rule of thumb is to start with a 10% increase over maintenance, monitor your weight for 2 weeks, and adjust from there. For example, if your maintenance is 2,500 calories, start at around 2,750 calories. If you're gaining fat too fast, scale back by 100 calories. If you're not gaining at all, bump it up by 100 calories. Just enough to drive growth without blowing up your waistline. Then when you cut later, you strip away the excess fat and reveal the new muscle underneath. And here's the best part. Your body keeps most of that muscle even after you diet down. Thanks to muscle memory and retained myonuclei, previously gained muscle is easier to maintain and rebuild even in a deficit. A study from Frontiers in Physiology confirms this, showing that once myonuclei are added to muscle fibers, they stick around even after long periods of detraining or caloric restriction. The bottom line is, if you want to radically change your physique, a bulk cut cycle is still the most efficient approach. That's why bodybuilders continue building muscle this way in preparation for any event, ranging from a local natural bodybuilding competition all the way to Mr. Olympia. So if you're already lifting consistently and want to maximize size, shape, and strength, don't shy away from putting on some weight. Just do it smart with clean whole foods, strategic tracking, and balanced macros. But calories alone won't get you jacked. You have to apply pressure consistently, and that's where progressive overload comes in. This is the cornerstone of every great physique. If you lift the same weight for the same reps, for the same sets, week after week, you're not building anything. You're just maintaining. Muscle is a survival response to stress. It only grows when your body perceives a threat it can't handle. So if you want more size, you have to force your muscles to do more over time. That might mean adding weight to the bar. It might mean adding reps, sets, or reducing rest between sets. However, one of the easiest, surefire ways to ensure that you're progressively overloading, which is also by far my favorite way because it's so simple, is just upping the weight load you use over time. And here's the thing, progressive overload isn't always linear. Some weeks you'll feel off. Life, stress, and sleep all affect performance, but over time, your trajectory needs to trend upward. One strategy that often gets overlooked is using a periodization model that cycles through different rep ranges to build both strength and size over time. You can start with moderate reps, 6 to 10 for 3 weeks, trying to lift a heavier weight within that rep range each week, then transition to low reps, so only 3 to 5 reps for 3 weeks to focus on raw strength, and finally move into higher reps, 12 to 15 for 3 weeks to build muscular endurance. After completing this cycle, you start over at 6 to 10 reps, ideally lifting more weight each time you return to a previous phase. This rotating structure keeps your body adapting and helps you avoid plateaus. But a big key is tracking. You need to write down your weights each week so you're not guessing. You're progressively getting stronger by design. It's not an accident. Over time, this deliberate overload builds a lot of muscle. Another smart tactic is to use drop sets or supersets to ramp up volume without extending the length of your workout. Drop sets lets you take a set past failure by reducing the weight mid-set, while supersets pair 2 exercises back-to-back with minimal rest. Both methods create massive muscle fatigue and metabolic stress, which are 2 critical triggers for growth. And if you ever plateau, you can consider changing many of the other variables, but only one at a time. Weight, reps, rest time, tempo, or in other words, your rep speed, and frequency, or in other words, upping the amount of days you hit the same muscle group every week. All that can lead to more growth. But you want to try one change at a time if you hit a plateau, because mastering muscle growth doesn't come from doing 20 different things at the same time. It comes from doing the basics and the essentials with an actual strategic plan. I won't dive into the specific studies, but just know that we have decades of training data that ties progressive overload directly to muscle growth. Of course, training hard is only half the battle. Your body can't grow without the raw materials it needs. And the most important of those raw materials is protein. Every time you lift, you create micro tears in your muscles, and protein is what repairs those tears, making them bigger and stronger. Without enough protein, you're basically wasting your workouts. The sweet spot for most people is somewhere between 3/4 to 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight per day. So if you weigh 180 pounds, you're aiming for around 135 to 180 grams of protein daily. That sounds like a lot, but it gets easier when you split it across multiple meals throughout the day. That's right, I love fasting and spend most of my days fasting because my main goal right now is not adding more muscle. But if my goal was to add muscle as quickly as possible, I would be eating at least 3 to 5 meals a day, especially because you need time to simply take in enough of the right calories. Also think of your body like a construction site. If the builders don't have bricks, they can't finish the job. Protein is the bricks. And it matters not just how much you eat, but how you space it out. Spiking protein synthesis multiple times per day, roughly every 3 to 4 hours, keeps your body in a more stable anabolic state. It also helps control appetite and cravings. This doesn't mean it's impossible to build muscle eating 1 meal a day, but it's definitely not optimal. And don't be afraid to include both lean and fatty sources. Chicken, turkey, egg whites, and fish are great, but so are steak, salmon, whole eggs, and even pork. Just balance your overall calories and you'll be fine. Research backs this up strongly. A meta-analysis in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition concluded that increased dietary protein enhances lean muscle mass gained from resistance training. Another study in the Journal of Nutrition found that spreading protein intake evenly across 3 meals, each with at least 30 grams of protein, led to higher muscle protein synthesis compared to a skewed intake concentrated in one big meal at dinner. Also, research published in Nutrients showed that higher protein diets were linked with better body composition outcomes and improved satiety. Now, once your training and nutrition are dialed in, you can start looking at supplements, not as a replacement for hard work, but as a way to enhance what you're already doing right. And the #1 supplement for muscle growth is creatine. Creatine monohydrate has been studied more than any other performance supplement on the market, and the results are crystal clear. It helps you train harder, recover faster, and build more muscle. Specifically, creatine increases your body's ability to produce ATP, which is the main source of energy used by your cells during high-intensity activities like lifting weights. That translates to more reps, more strength, and more total training volume. And over time, that volume leads to, you guessed it, more growth. What makes creatine unique is that it also pulls more water into your muscle cells, which not only improves hydration, but also sends a strong cell volumizing signal that supports hypertrophy. And there's emerging research showing creatine may even benefit cognition and neurological health. So you can take 5 grams a day for about 3 to 4 weeks to fully saturate your muscles. After that, you can switch to a maintenance dose of around 3 grams per day to keep your levels topped off. It doesn't matter what time you take it or what you take it with. Beyond creatine, whey protein can be a useful tool for hitting your daily protein target, especially post-workout. Omega-3 fatty acids from fish oil help reduce inflammation, and if you're deficient, supplementing vitamin D can support testosterone and immune function. You don't really need too much beyond that. You just need to cover your bases and stay focused on what actually moves the needle, and really the main lever is creatine. In terms of evidence, the International Society of Sports Nutrition has declared creatine monohydrate to be the most effective nutritional supplement currently available for increasing high-intensity exercise capacity and lean body mass. More recently, a 2021 review in Nutrients reaffirmed creatine's ability to improve muscle mass, strength, and performance, especially when combined with structured resistance training. Now let's move on to another fundamental, sleep. This is the most underrated part of the muscle building equation. People obsess over pre-workouts, macros, and lifting splits, but ignore the one thing that drives actual growth. You probably heard this before, but it's worth repeating. Muscle isn't built in the gym, it's built when you rest. And nothing restores your body like sleep. During deep sleep, your body releases the majority of its growth hormone. Your testosterone resets, your nervous system recovers, your muscles repair and grow. Miss out on that and everything else you're doing suffers. Poor sleep tanks your energy, kills your workout performance, increases cravings, and disrupts your hormone levels. And over time, it drastically reduces your ability to build or maintain muscle. Sleep deprivation also increases cortisol, a stress hormone that breaks down muscle tissue and promotes fat storage, the exact opposite of what you want. The goal should be 7 to 9 hours of high quality sleep every night. That means turning off screens an hour before bed, keeping your room dark and cool, and sticking to a consistent bedtime even on weekends. Limit caffeine after roughly 2 p.m., avoid alcohol close to bedtime, and if you struggle to wind down, try magnesium or a short meditation before bed. Several studies underscore how critical sleep is for muscle recovery and growth. A landmark study found that restricting sleep to just 5 hours per night for 1 week significantly reduced testosterone levels in healthy young men. But more recently, research published in Sports Medicine reviewed dozens of studies and concluded that inadequate sleep impairs muscle protein synthesis, increases inflammation, and negatively affects athletic performance and recovery. So if you're serious about growth, sleep isn't optional. It's one of the most important muscle building tools that you can unlock just by getting to bed at a reasonable time. So when you strip it all down, building muscle comes down to these 5 things. Eat in a surplus so your body has the resources to grow. Train with progressive overload to force adaptation. Eat enough protein to recover and rebuild. Use a few proven supplements to enhance performance, and prioritize sleep like your gains depend on it, because they do. These aren't secrets, they're not hacks, they're the foundations that every muscular guy you admire has mastered. You don't need perfect genetics, you don't need to train for 2 hours a day, you just need to get the basics right and do them consistently. That's how you go from average to muscular, from frustrated to confident, from stuck to amazed with your results. Just 5 things, done well, done consistently. That's the formula. So that about wraps it up. If you've enjoyed today's video, make sure you subscribe. And if you want a done-for-you plan that incorporates all the principles I just spoke about today, you can click the link in the description below, or you can head straight on over to my website at gravitytransformation.com. I'll see you guys soon.